Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a book review of City of Reckoning by Brianna Da Silva. Now, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. It is an advanced copy. I got it in September 2021 from Brianna because we are friends, so just a heads up there. It's a high 4 stars, like 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was almost to 5, but I'm going to explain why it wasn't 5. You know, and also keep in mind, it is an arc, so there are things that changed. But I don't think it's like a huge amount because there are, you know, just types of things that I know to be in the final copy of City of Reckoning. You all know that I'm really bad at book summaries, and I don't want to get this wrong because this is an epic fantasy where Brianna even came up with basic language that I have not seen before. So it's that much of an epic fantasy, completely new world, fantastic map, and like I said, she came up with a language. It's not like Tolkien or anything, but there is a new language involved in this world, and this really focuses on colonialism and overthrowing a tyrant kingdom. It's a duology. I'm pretty sure it's a duology, or it's a trilogy. I should figure that out, shouldn't I? I apologize to Brianna if it's a 3-book series, but last time I thought it was a duology. It's like 761, give or take. It could definitely be a weapon. You could definitely give someone a mild concussion with this. Now, as I said, not great with book summaries. Don't want to get this wrong, so I'm just going to read the short little summary on the back before we really jump in, okay? How far would you go for freedom? Great line. Kindi Sharo is used to hiding. As a nocturne, her bat wings, claws, and night vision place her under constant threat of hunters who cruelly slaughter her kind for sport. But everything changes the day of the invasion. The Dorish Empire drafts the nocturnes it once prosecuted to help defend against a godlike foe. Kindi enters the war, and she has an ulterior motive. Use the war to destroy her arch-enemy, Charis Putin, before he gains enough power to destroy her first. I probably messed up his name, but he doesn't deserve a correct pronunciation, so I'm just gonna keep going. Meanwhile, Lacia Mayolo, an elite wolf-accompanied warrior, plots rebellion against the Dorish Empire. When she is drafted to fight for her enemies, she must find a way to subvert the war for her own purposes. But suspicion and distrust haunts her every move. This war has many sides, and she's not sure which side she's on anymore. The bonds of friendship will be tested, alliances will be questioned. In a story of political intrigue, ethics of war, and young love, one question must be answered. Which side will you join? Okay, this book is too heavy to hold up for the remainder of the review, so I'm going to put that right there. Fantastic cover. If you look closely, you can see, you know, of course, the bat wing right here, and I'm going to assume that this is Lacia. I'm just assuming right here. This is a cover that you have to look at and study to get all of the pieces, and I enjoy that. Now, why is it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and why did I round it up? Now, I think this is I was gonna say epic fantasy thing where you have prologues. I don't like prologues. I've never ever read a prologue that does anything for the story. So this isn't a Brianna thing. It's a prologue problem for me. We follow Lacia, who's the warrior with the cute little dog. I do like an animal companion. That's a plus, not a minus, with her childhood, and then it's quite a few pages, and then we jump into first chapter. But what about Kindy? So it's Lucia and Kindy, those are the two main characters in this book. I am thinking, so maybe Kindy gets the prologue of her childhood in the second book. I do hope so, or else it feels very unbalanced. But I'm pretty sure Brianna's going to do something like that, especially if it's a duology. Then you have, one book prologue is Lucia, and then the second book prologue is Kindy. Makes sense, right? I do hope that is the case. I don't know if I needed to have that prologue about her childhood. There was some interesting information that I think needed to be there, but I don't know if you needed to do a decade or two flashback into the past to get into that. Second point is, I think there are some words and phrases and how the dialogue makes it a little too modern, like 21st century language, and I think you see that a lot in epic fantasy. Actually, not even in epic you just see it everywhere, and I'm sure I have it in my books as well, but I try really hard to not get that in my books if it's not modern or somewhat modern. I'm sure you can see it a little bit in A Patriot's Tale, but I really worked on not having the modern phrasing or wording in a historical fiction novel or in an epic fantasy that is not modern whatsoever, that type of thing. So again, that's not about Brianna, it's about just like writers in general. But when I'm reading, I'm like, oh, that's a little too modern for me, and that's why I do so many edits to try and get that out. Because when we're writers in this time period, and we just have to work harder to not let that seep in to books that are not of this time period, or even like the 20th century. We gotta work on that collectively. And there are a bit too much use of ellipses and italics. I used to be like that, but I have a fantastic editor, and she just slaps my hand every time I do it, So now I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it at all. I can't because Sarah's gonna get me. So I think maybe that was like an editing thing, or maybe there are certain editors that like or even love italics for words, but I kind of have grown out of that. So I'm thinking as a reader and a writer, maybe because it's an arc, and I usually think as a reader and a writer, so that's my bias, I guess. I'm gonna say bias because I'm reading it not just for enjoyment, but also as a fellow writer / a little bit editor. Like, I self-edit fairly well. As my editor says, I'm pretty good at that. So that's where I'm coming from. Also, I know it's epic fantasy. Maybe I'm not an epic fantasy connoisseur or mega fan, but I don't know if it needed to be 760 pages. I think you could have cut out at least 20, if not 30 pages. People will say, well, does that make a huge difference? I think it does, because you're slicing off the fat of a book. And maybe that is something that epic fantasy readers want. They want all of it, and that's why a lot of epic fantasy is really big. That could be it. I guess I don't read enough epic fantasy to say either which way, and there's not a lot of filler words and phrases and things like that. And that's not just epic fantasy, that's every single book out there. I think it probably comes because I have ADHD, it took me a long time to finish a 767 page book. I obviously did it, and I always will do. I know that I can finish a really big book. I've done it many times before, but I think that if you can get it down even 30 pages or like even 20 pages, I think that it overall makes the story better, because you're just cutting away the things that don't need to necessarily be there. I'm of the opinion that it needs to be in there, then it's going to be in there. But if you want it in there, cut it. I see a lot of writers and readers say, I want this scene in it. It doesn't really do much, but I want it in. Now, what I liked about this book, we're talking about an epic fantasy about tackling and utterly destroying colonialism, which is the Dorish Empire. And it is done by Kendi and Lucia and friends and family. And though they are young, I think we have to remember the fact that a lot of rebellions, a lot of revolutions are started by young people. I know I got that a lot from A Patriot's Tale because Lily's 17, but do people remember how old, some of the leaders of the American Revolutionary War were? They were teenagers, and some of them were early 20s. But it's a reminder that the young are the ones that oftentimes can see the wrong that's happening, and the older people are, for whatever reason, hesitant, scared, accepting of the regime that's happening, in this case the Dorish Empire, and they don't want to rock the boat, or they like it. So that is something to be said. It's a trend in not just epic fantasy, but in real life. Now, there is also getting over a drug addiction, and I like how that was portrayed because it's realistic. I think a lot of people try to go with everyone can go cold turkey with alcohol or, like whatever drug it is. And there are some people that can, but the majority of people absolutely struggle. They're just going to struggle, and there's going to be relapses, and I think that is the realistic approach. Now, there is also, like I said in the beginning, a cute little puppy. I mean, it's not like a happy companion. It's like a guard dog, so it's a very serious little cute puppy. But we are, in fact, interested in all puppies. I do love a good dog companion, or like any sidekick. I like a sidekick. I also like the way that grief and war and violence is handled. It's handled realistically. It's not glamorized or romanticized. And fighting and training combat is handled realistically as well. There's a lot of writers that like to have someone, their characters in combat training for a few months, and then they're badass and they can do everything and anything. That's not how that works. Like, it takes years. Absolutely, it takes years to be good. Not great, good. And that was mentioned many times, or like showcased many times in this novel, and I appreciate the realism of war, of combat, of just like the military overall. I don't like when people glamorize war, PTSD, which you see here. I mean, you see a lot of mental illness around war, as one should, because that's what happens during war. People are not okay during and after, and they're not okay before either. But, you bring in the combat PTSD, anxiety, depression, drug addiction, whatever it may be. There's a lot of writers that don't talk about that, and that is very important, and it needs to be showcased in a realistic way. Thank you so much for watching my book review on City of Reckoning by my friend Brianna Da Silva. It is wide, so you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, I do believe, and her second book, I do hope it's a duology or else I'm going to embarrass myself, her second book is coming out, I'm not 100% sure when. I should have figured that out before I said that, didn't I? But, you know, we just go with the flow, I guess, on this channel. You can follow her on Twitter and on her website for actual information about her and her books, because you can't trust me, obviously. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great reading and writing day. Bye!